Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here and welcome to my Doctor Who Season 18 reviews. We'll be starting this season with Story 1, The Leisure Hive. Oh boy, The Leisure Hive. Okay, well personally I don't hate this one as much as quite a few other people, but I can see a lot of where the problems are for quite a few people. It's just not that interesting really. The original idea apparently was that David Fisher wrote a story about space mafia, which sounds really good, and the what are they called? The Fasami, these guys. Apparently they were going to be gangsters or mafia, and they were going to be the baddies. You do get to some baddie ones in the finished story, but I think as a race they were going to be the baddies. But John Nathan Turner, the new producer, didn't like that idea, so he ordered Fisher and script editor Christopher H. Bidmead to rewrite the story, a sort of a play on how the British tourism and how that was been declining over the years, and so it's been sort of like that. Thing is, they don't make that angle of the story interesting. It seems to be all about the Argolians handing over Argolis to the Fasami or to Earth or someone when their Leisure Hive is going downhill. But we don't really, that's not really the interesting bit. No, the interesting side would have been if we got to explore some of the tourism stuff. Maybe if it was all, if part one was dedicated to setting up this Leisure Hive, then the plot comes around at the cliffhanger is when the plot starts, and then there's some sort of mystery conspiracy going on. That might have been a good story to do, but no, it's put to the side really, considering that the story was changed to be like this. The fact that it's supposed to be a satire of British tourism in the late 70s, early 80s, is put to the side for a pretty dull plot. Doesn't really make much of a, there isn't really much point to it. This young Argolian called, what's his face? I can't remember his name. Has he got his name on here? No, I can't remember his name, but the young one, who's over here. By the way, the actor does a really good job with his character. But his plan is just to create a new Argolian race through genetically manipulating cells of Argolians, which is what he is basically. Yeah, I guess he only really does it properly in part 4, and he seems to be very obsessed of a new dawn, a new age of the Argolians. But it's not that interesting. And similarly, the two Fasamis trying to infiltrate the Leisure Hive, the Hive, and try and buy the Hive from the Argolians. It's not as interesting. I mean, it's quite fun to see them pretending to be humans, but that's as far as it goes. And why do they create acts of sabotage? And if it's the government agents, why do they create this acts of sabotage? Why do they try and kill the Earth human? Why do they kill? They try to kill the Doctor. Well, actually, that's a projection image. Okay, why do they pretend that the other guy's dead then? If he is dead, actually, I think he might be dead. He might be dead, actually. P.S. The effects, by the way, they look a bit dated now. For the time, they might have looked pretty good. With maybe the stuff where the heads and the arms and the legs come apart from the body, that's actually pretty good. But pretty rubbish when the Doctor and Romana are flying through squash court window cleaner. Didn't expect him today. Ah well. So that's really the plot of the Leisure Hive, and it's just not that interesting, is it? Just there. I would have liked a bit more about the actual tourism side, the activities that they're doing. But it's not that good. And also the bit on Brighton Beach. That first pan is way too long. I mean, it's a nice pan, but it takes forever to actually get to the Doctor. And also the first bit with Romana and K9, it's just awkward. Apparently John Nathan Turner didn't like K9, and so forth, had the whole serial having him beaten up and abused. Apparently they got John Leeson in just so that because K9 was leaving at the end of the season. Which appealed to John Leeson. Maybe he was available for the character now. If not, then they probably would have kept David Bridley, which I wouldn't have minded. But John Leeson is definitely K9, so it's glad to have him back. But I'm not sure how the character leaving at the end of the season would be appealing. Maybe if he wasn't really keen on voicing the character, I don't know why he would be, how having him just leave at the end of the season would be appealing, especially as he gets his own spin-off, almost attempted spin-off later on. And yeah, the way that it's handled, it's just the story is another City of Death, Destiny of the Daleks, Power Patrol, Image of Defender. They don't really need K9. He's just there for the start, and then he's out for the rest. Which is a shame, because he could have been a bit more useful. I love K9, and if this is how they're going to treat him, then yeah, maybe he should leave. Because if they don't care about writing K9, then why should the audience care? Same with the Daleks in Destiny of the Daleks. If the show isn't going to care about the characters, then why should the audience? Thankfully, the main characters, the Doctor and Romana, are treated with a bit more respect. I think Lana Ward's performance in the first few scenes is a bit weak, but she gets better as the story goes along. And Tom Baker is still really good, considering the changes they made to him, his character and his costume. Tom Baker still they almost wanted him to look old throughout the entire season, which happens during the story, but then he goes back to normal. Thankfully, Tom Baker still is, and also having Turkish flu apparently. But Tom Baker is still able to give a great performance in this story, and he's still as good as ever, even if he's a bit more moody and a bit more downbeat. But considering some of the changes, it makes sense. Other actors, I think the guy who plays the Argonian baddie is good, despite not being being a pretty weak baddie. His mother and father characters are pretty good characters as well, especially the mother, who has quite a lot to do in the story. She's actually a very good character. The two Fasimis, who are pretending to be humans, when they're human form, they look pretty good. And the guy, one of them, still does the voice of another Fasimi when he takes the translator. And also there's this other scientist guy who's okay, and everybody else just isn't that great. There is this one guy who isn't that great of a character, but there is a really good bit in part 2 where there's tension building up to him being killed. That's actually quite interesting, where he finds the suit, the bodysuit, and then a Fasimi kills him. It's probably the bodysuit of one of those criminals, and that the Fasimi was one of the West Lodge criminals. And that's pretty good. However, then the Doctor is put on trial for the guy's death. This is where Stones of Blood failed, David Fisher. Just saying. This is where Stones of Blood fell down a little. Another fucking trial, and it goes nowhere. Just an excuse to have the Doctor turn old for half the story. And the two Fasimis somehow, or the scientists, see Romana and the Doctor on Earth in Brighton Beach, which explains for that really poor transition shot in part 1. In fact, the editing in this story is actually pretty weak in quite a few places. That bit and the cliffhanger of part 3. Oh my god, that is such a poorly shot and edited cliffhanger. Who directed this fucking story? It was Lovett Bickford. Do not come back. Do not come back. Lovett Bickford. Thank God, that was a poorly edited, executed scene. And then part 4 is just what's his face running around, screaming about the new age and putting it into effect, and it not working. It's not interesting. This story is not interesting. Couldn't we have had that mafia story instead? Or at least look a bit more on the travel angle, the tourism angle for a bit more, and then bring in this conspiracy plot. Leisure Hive is not that great. I did have had some enjoyable moments throughout it. I'm not going to completely bash on it. I'm not going to rant on it like Jack McCulloch did. He absolutely hates the story, as does Harry Thomas, as I noticed in a comment on Jack's review. I'm not going to bash as much as those two guys, but certainly this is a pretty poor way to start off Season 18, and a very poor way to start off John Nathan Turner's era as producer. If we have a look at the other producers' first stories quickly, past and future to this story, An Earthly Child, the very first story, Verity Lambert's first, and An Earthly Child was a good start to the show. The first episode is brilliant and a must-see for everybody. The second, third, and fourth episodes not as much, but still necessary to watch afterwards to continue the experience. But certainly the first episode is a must-watch, not just in Doctor Who, but in British television. In fact, television, full stop. Then we got The Mythmakers for John Willis. Not a great story, but it was good. Then we got Ines Lloyd in The Celestial Toymaker. That was a great story, minus one use of the N-word, but in a nursery rhyme context. Then we got Ines Lloyd. Peter Bryant, I think his first story was Tomb of the Cybermen, which is fucking awesome. Derek Sherwin oversaw the transition of Patrick Troughton into John Pertwee, so he only produced the War Games and Spearhead from Space, but the War Games was amazing, as was Spearhead. Doctor Who and the Silurians was Barry Letts' first story. That one was great. Philip Hinchcliffe took over with The Ark in Space. That was amazing. Grain Williams took over with Horror Fang Rock. That was great. That's one of his best. That's one of the best of his era. Then we get to this story. Next up would be, technically it'd be Philip David Siegel and the producers of the TV movie for the TV movie, which I like, but not everybody does. It's quite a divided one. Next up, we're now going into showrunners of the new series with Russell T Davies on Rose, which was great, a brilliant way to bring back the show. Then we get Stephen Moffat with The 11th Hour, and that was brilliant. And then we get Chris Chibnall with The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which was also brilliant. Not as much as 11th Hour, but still really brilliant. The best one out of all of these is easily Tomb of the Cybermen. Then The Ark in Space. Then I think I might say The 11th Hour. And the worst one, excluding this story, is probably The Mythmakers. But then we get this story. This one is the weakest of the first stories for a showrunner. I'd have to do... if I was to do a mini ranking, I'd have to do it at the very end of this review, and just there might be a few bloopers here and there. I might come up with something, but certainly Leisure Hive would be at the bottom. And the changes that were made, let's go through them. Firstly, the new title sequence and theme tune, bloody love them. Apart from the fact that Tom Baker's face doesn't look very good. Sorry, Tom. Question marks on the Doctor's shirts. Well, I associate those more with the 5th, 6th and 7th Doctors, and I actually quite like them. However, I don't think they quite work with the 4th Doctor. But that being said, I think he could have had those shirts, question marks on the collars. He could have kept that. But his burgundy costume is probably his weakest, and even the idea of they had the idea of getting rid of the scarf, which is an absolute no for the 4th if you're doing the Fourth Doctor, unless it's a one-off special costume like in Talent of Wang Chang. If it's something like that, fine. One-off, two-off, sometimes special costume that he might wear occasionally, like David Tennant wore his tuxedo costume occasionally and didn't have his iconic coat or suit or anything. But for the Fourth Doctor's regular costume, his typical, usually every story costume, for his main costume for this season, not having the scarf would have been a disaster. So thankfully they kept the scarf. It would have been fine if there was any one-off costumes that didn't need it, then fair enough, like Talent Wang Chang. But if it's something like this, then if it's a regular costume, no, just absolutely no. And the burgundy is a nice colour, but I would have rather they kept one of the previous costumes, the kind of the grey coat one with the multicoloured scarf. That would have been especially the multicoloured scarf. Or go back to that dark red and darker coloured scarf costume we had in the earlier seasons. It's a good shade of red, but I think it's the weakest of Tom Baker's costumes. It's just not really shouting out much, to be honest. Doesn't quite look right on him as much as the other two. And considering the fact that I think he wore too many layers earlier on, we've now got to the complete opposite. He hasn't got enough, and it doesn't quite fit. So again, going back to that grey coat and long multicolored scarf costume from the last few seasons, that would have been better. That would have been better. Otherwise, just give him a complete new costume. Actually, no, that's a terrible idea. Sorry. It's what they did with Matt Smith. Except with Matt Smith, it worked. Same for Capaldi, come to think of it. In fact, Capaldi's, it was a complete new costume. Other changes were they got Peter Howell to do the music here, which it's good in some places, but not as good as others. And John Nathan Taylor wanted to make the series more serious again after the more comedic last few seasons. And to be honest, yes, I absolutely 100% agree with that. We need to have more serious stuff. After the comedicness of the last few seasons, we need more seriousness. We need to go back to the Hinchcliffe era style stories. What do we get with the first Godo? A holdover from the Williams era. Yeah, it's a holdover from the previous era. It's not going down this new serious direction. The Doctor's just moody. I mean, it's not as comedic as the last era, but it's not serious enough either. Maybe, yes, first story, fair enough, but it's just not serious enough. So we haven't got down that angle just yet. You want to go serious? You want to do serious? You go back and watch Hinchcliffe's era. You go back and watch that era. Or you go watch some John Pertwee stories with the Barry Letts series. You go watch the Derek Sherwin produced stories. They're serious. But this is not serious just yet. Maybe it gets serious later on, but at the moment it's not quite that serious yet. It's not as comedic, but it's certainly not as serious. And yeah, that's another reason why this story fails. It tries to change a lot, but it doesn't succeed in those changes. It's trying to be more all fresh and new, but it half of the time doesn't work. And I think the problem is it's because we've still got the Fourth Doctor, and as much as I love Tom Baker and the Fourth Doctor, I think the new freshness, the whole new change, everything changing would have worked even better if we had a new Doctor on board. If this is Tom Baker's 7th and final season, I think all the changes are going to work a lot better, or at least feel a bit more fresher when Peter Davison takes over. Then again, I could be completely wrong. We'll see. But I think part of the problem is Tom Baker. I think the problem is because we've still got the 7th Doctor, but because we've got this radical new change in everything else, it's still feeling a bit dull and worn out. And that's why I think once Peter Davison takes over, it's going to refresh itself. I know what they're trying to do. They're trying to make it more fresh and new and a bit more upbeat and more look a bit more high budget to compete with American programs. showing on ITV in the night, and make it all brand new and fresh for the 1980s. But the thing is, they're doing it with the Fourth Doctor, and it doesn't quite work as well as it would with 5 or 6 or 7. Because those are Doctors for both that Pacific era, whilst Tom Baker's been going through, at this point, 4 producers. 4. One of them was only around to see him settle in, and then hands over to the next guy. 5 if you count 5 producers if you count the producer of the 2017 animated version of Sharda. But if we discount that for the moment, then 4 producers. 4. And yes, the 1992 linking material is John Nathan Turner, so he counts. So yeah, 4 producers. One of them just around for 1 episode, and then you got the other 3. This era has probably gone through the most number of producers. This Doctor's gone through the most number of producers since William Hartnell, who had 4. But at least that era, it was kept consistent enough. In fact, I think they went through that number. No, it wasn't 4. It was 3 producers. Sorry, my mistake. But they went through that many of producers in a season. But at least it was consistent. This time round, Tom Baker's been serious, horror, gothic horror, comedy, silly. Then we got this really good story arc that merges comedy, but also quite serious in some places. Then we go ultra silly, ultra comedic, and in some cases just outright insulting. And then we get trying to be new, but at the same time feeling a bit stuck in the mud at the same time. And that's this story. It's trying to be new, it's trying to be fresh, but it's stuck in the mud at the same time. It feels like a more serious holdover from the Williams era, and it's trying to ignite the 80s, but it's not quite doing it. If it was another story, maybe it would have worked, but the story that they chose to start the season with doesn't do it well. So I'm going to give The Leisure Hive a 4 out of 10. Like I said, I don't hate as much as Jack or Harry, but certainly not a very good way to start the final season of Tom Baker, season 18. The first season of the 80s, excluding if you exclude the last 2 episodes of Horns of Nimon and the fact that Sharda should have been broadcast in 1980, but the first full-length season of the 1980s starts off with a whimper rather than a bang. You know, most of the other producers started off with bangs or hits, especially the new series. They start off with bangs. This isn't new series level. This isn't even good classic series level. This is mediocre going on bad. I mean, I'm not getting as riled up about it as Destiny of the Daleks, because that one pissed off me so much because of the treatment of the Daleks. And it's not as bad as Horns of Nimon either, because that one I just found absolutely even less of substance. But this is the story that technically follows Horns of Nimon, because Sharda wasn't broadcast. This is technically the next story. What a great way to follow it up, am I right, guys? Yeah, fuck, I wish Sharda had been broadcast even more now, because it would at least been a gap. Ugh, well, hopefully the next story will be better. At time of recording, it's second on my season 18 ranking, and I did enjoy it when I saw it last, but maybe my opinion will change on the rewatch. To be honest, if it does stay second best story of the season, then we're in for a bumpy ride this season. Next time, Meglos. Like I said, it could change. Could very much change. It could be the second worst. It could be the worst after the next viewing. I'll let you know in the review, okay? Alright, calm down. Calm down. This one's gone down to last place, by the way, for now. Okay, before we do go, I'm going to quickly do worst to best producer / showrunner openers. I'm going to do worst to best showrunner ranking. Okay, so this is my ranking, and we are ranking An Unearthly Child, The Mythmakers, The Celestial Toymaker, The Tomb of the Sidemen, The War Games, Doctor Who and the Silurians, The Ark in Space, Horror Fang Rock, The Leisure Hive, The Movie, Rose, The 11th Hour, and The Woman Who Fell to Earth. And the producers are as followed: Verity Lambert, John Wiles, Innes Lloyd, Peter Bryant, Derek Sherwin, Barry Letts, Philip Hinchcliffe, Graham Williams, John Nathan Turner, Peter V. Ware, Philip Hay, David Siegel, and Alex Benton. I'm not sure which of the three from the TV movie actually had more control. I think Philip David Siegel, but I'm not sure. So I put the producer and the executive producers in. And also main executive producers and showrunners of the new series, Russell T Davies, Stephen Moffat, and Chris Chibnall. So for the ranking, it's 13 of them. The number 13 is the Leisure Hive, which is the first of John Nathan Turner. Number 12 is the Mythmakers, the first for John Willis. Number 11 is An Unearthly Child, the first for Verity Lambert. Number 10 is the TV movie, the first for Peter V. Ware, Philip David Siegel, and Alex Benton. Number 9 is Rose, which is the first for Russell T Davies. Now, that one is currently an 8 out of 10 at the moment on my score, but if it goes to 9, then it might move to 7 on this list. 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10. If it becomes a 9 out of 10 by the review, then it will move to 7th place on this list. Number 8 is Horror Fang Rock, which is the first for Graham Williams. I just had to write that in. For Graham Williams. Number 7 is Doctor Who and the Silurians, which is the first for Barry Letts. Number 6 is The Celestial Toymaker, which is the first for Innes Lloyd. Number 5 is The Woman Who Fell to Earth, which is the first for Chris Chibnall. Number 4 is The War Games, which is the first for Derek Sherwin. Number 3 is The 11th Hour, which is the first for Stephen Moffat. Number 2 is The Ark in Space, which is the first for Philip Hinchcliffe. And number 1 is The Tomb of the Cybermen, which is the first for Peter Bryant. Though, to be honest, Peter Bryant gets the worst exit story for a showrunner. Say what you want about End of Time or Twice Upon a Time, or the Ark, but the Space Pirates is easily the worst showrunner exit, easily. The best is probably Spearhead from Space for his successor, or Talons of Wang Chiang. No, Spearhead. Yeah, so that's it from my review of The Leisure Hive and a mini ranking of Doctor Who producer and executive producer / showrunner opening stories. Like I said, with the TV movie, I'm not sure whether it's Peter V. Ware or Philip David Siegel or Alex Benton who's in charge. I might put it down to Philip David Siegel, as it was his idea. It was he did try to bring the show back, and that was as far as he got with the TV movie. That was as far as he got, but he was the main driving force behind that, so I might put it down to him for that one. But yeah, but let's just say this one's the weakest, which is a shame. So thank you for watching my review of The Leisure Hive and my mini ranking of the showrunner openers, and next time we'll be looking at Meglos. I'll see you guys next time. Goodbye. Don't forget to click below to subscribe to the official Nicholas Payne Retro YouTube channel. Hello ladies and gentlemen, Nick here, and welcome to my review of Doctor Who. We are starting season 8. And then put to what the direction was put to the whole point about how it was political commentary on or satire really. Oh, is he going around the back? Okay, makes sense. And also, K9. I think she's still the only showrunner. I mean, we do have some female producers in the new series, but the executive producers, I mean, there was a few female executive producers as well, but the showrunner has been male for the new series. Okay, but Verity and Albert did a very good job with the first episode. Okay, but An Unearthly Child was the and another. So not directly not a direct insult, just so it wasn't completely terrible. Fuck it. As producer, he was that one was good. Oh, great. Then we get The 11th Hour with Stephen Moffat. Stephen Moffat on The 11th Hour. But unless if the new cost, but a regular wear costume that you would wear every story, your typical costume, if it's not featuring the, but for the Fourth Doctor's every story use, every day, now. But I would have rather they had gone back to a costume that they kept the 19. But I would. Considering he used to wear lots of layers, that's what were the other changes? And I do think some of the new I think this was a bad choice to start this. I think maybe if it was any other story, this. So that's good. And I realise I haven't done the score for this story yet. Sorry. So I'm going to be. Anyway, that's it from me. Thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next. Okay, here's my ranking. Number 13 is actually 13. Is the Leisure Hive, which is the first. Okay, my rank. Okay, this is my ranking. So number 13 is John Nathan Turner with the Leisure Hive. This is not of the.